Well, hey everybody. I thought this time, instead of hanging in the studio, I'd hang outside with my dog while we do this broadcast. Tonight's a little different. I'm live right now to answer any questions that people might have when they pop up. But we have a video that we did with Jose Loya. We did this yesterday afternoon because of schedules and timing. So right now, it's important that we go live on this kind of thing, hanging in the backyard. You might hear my dog bark, but she's awesome. Just answer some questions if anyone has anything that they want to talk about, or after the video goes and the interview goes with Jose, if you have any questions after that. The point of us trying to do this kind of thing like this is so through the campaign, you can always ask whatever you'd like. And I'll try my best to give you a really good, sometimes way too thorough answer, but that's the nerd part. So let's take a peek here. I am going to go back and forth between different things to make sure I'm not missing anything. So far, so good. So I'm going to go ahead and run the interview that I did with Jose Loya yesterday.
And why don't you introduce yourself for everybody?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Loya. I am originally from Dumas, Texas. Family immigrated here from Mexico when I was in 5th grade. Did all the sports of the Panhandle. Joined the Marine Corps right after 9/11 happened while I was a senior in high school. Did 2 combat tours in Iraq. Married love of my life, Dinah Loya, also running for office now. We got 3 kids. Still live in Dumas, Texas. Very involved in our community and our state.
The reason that we're talking today is about what you learned about cutting your hair in the military. No. It's really about employment and labor unions particularly. So you're quite an expert in this whole topic. Do you want to give everyone kind of some background of what you know?
Yeah, so growing up, never really had any involvement in organized labor. You know, my parents were hard workers in our community. They worked at the local meat packing plant. Didn't really have any exposure to organized labor until after the military. I got a job at Valero McKee Refinery up in Dumas, Texas, between Dumas and Sunray, and they had organized labor there. They had a local that belongs to United Steelworkers, and it's a local 487 that belongs to District 13. District 13 is one of the largest districts for United Steelworkers that covers Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. At the local refinery, I got involved. I was working nights and weekends, shift work, doing the refinery work, and me and a buddy of mine didn't know much about organized labor, but were unhappy how our organized labor within the refinery was running. So we decided to run for every office in at that local, and come find out we won everything that we ran for. And so we just got thrown into those leadership positions. Through there, I started understanding what a labor contract is, what organized labor actually does, and had the opportunity to go to a lot of trainings, a lot of different events through organized labor, and kind of worked my way up. He was president, I was vice president. We did all the jobs at that local union, negotiating our contracts, which is multi-million-dollar contracts with that specific company. I was offered the opportunity to go to leadership school through United Steelworkers. It's a program that teaches you in depth what organized labor is, from negotiating contracts to filing grievances and presenting arbitrations, and the history of the unions and where we come from and what they actually do for people, how they started, everything. It's a 4-year program where you go to Pittsburgh for 1 week out of the year, and it's a condensed, super good program. It was able to graduate from that program, which had a really low graduation rate, because in 4 years, a lot of things happen. People, get promoted, people find different jobs. So I was able to graduate. My district director, Ruben Garza, at the time, came down to Dumas. I had dinner with him. We started talking, kind of telling him my story, all the things that I did, and he offered me a position. He offered me an opportunity to come on with the steelworkers. And even at that, I was really nervous. I was like, man, I don't know. You know, I have a really good job at the refinery. And he said, man, you just come out, try it, see what it's like. And if you like it and we like you, then maybe there'll be an opportunity for you to come on, you know, and take this up as a full-time job.
And so what we do as normal humans is we say we're going to work and give you our time and we get compensated, but it isn't the pure value of the work we're doing. If it were, then there would be no profit. So in a capitalist structure like we have, the money is at the top. They use the labor, and then the extra is what they take for profit taking or compensation. And I think we see today that the distance between management and labor is significant as far as salaries.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're 100% right. And do exchange our labor for the paycheck, right? And if you look around, if you really start understanding unions, which most people in the Panhandle don't, because we really aren't exposed to that organized labor like a lot of the, you know, Northeast part of the country is, where labor's actually started. You know, you find out that organized labor brings a higher quality of work to the organizations that are more productive. They work harder. They're invested into the company, not just for the paycheck, but because they have a seat at the table and they're able to negotiate not just wages, but working conditions, safety. You know, the unions were born on safety. That was originally what started organized labor, is people dying in the mines. Mm-hmm. And when you have a seat at the table and you now have a say so in at least bargaining what you're working, what you're doing day to day, it gives you a different sense of belonging and of ownership of the actual company.
So I think ownership is the critical thing. So I've set up several different companies. I've done this entrepreneur thing for a while. And my goal has always been to set up a structure where we can bring people into the structure who also have ownership of that structure, not just as employees. That's a wage kind of a labor relationship, but more they own part of the investment and part of the success. And this gets into how stock works and what ownership of stock works and all those kind of tricky things. But the idea of setting up a company is not so you can say, I run a company and I take all the money. It's really so we can bring people in and they can have good lives and have good families, and they might have a good idea and start something themselves.
You know, as organized labor, I always told it when I started negotiating contracts, not just for my refinery, but statewide. You know, I negotiated contracts for everyone within gas and oil, chemicals, box plants. I had a group of probation officers in San Antonio that I took care of. I had just about a very diverse workforce, and people, when people feel like they have an ownership at their workplace, it makes them work different. It makes them own not just their labor, but what's going on around them. It makes them grow. It helps hold management accountable, because now you're not just working for somebody, you're part of the team, you're part of the company. Mm-hmm. And I always told people, first thing when we start negotiating contracts, I sit down with the group that I'm negotiating with and the company, and I say, you know, first off, I want you to understand that my goal is not to sit here and bleed this company dry to where we're taking so much that there's no profit and this company can't grow. My goal is to make sure that we get a fair wage for our work. And we want this company to be successful, because if the company's not successful, then the employees aren't successful. And if I go in there and take so much that it's putting the company in a bad place, they're going to shut down the company, and now we're not going to have a place to work. So it's that balance of being successful and just getting a piece of the pie. The growth for the people is in job security, keeping up with the cost of living and all that. And it's, we see these giant companies where they don't want to pay their employees a livable wage, yet their CEOs are getting $15-20 million bonuses at the end of the year. And that money, the disparity between the workers and the top people in that company is unreal.
So how is that? I completely. How do people feel that within unions? Do they have a sense of this? Do they know that there's some inequity?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, most of these companies are publicly traded companies, and they always, when you go into negotiations, almost every time the company comes out and says, we're having a really hard time right now. We aren't making very much money, and that's why we can't give you the wages you deserve. We want to, but we're not in the financial state to be able to give you those raises, those, the healthcare, the benefits that you want, because we're hurting. Yet you look at the company and you're seeing all this, the value of their stock, their bonuses to their top people. We're very well aware of it. And we actually, when we go into negotiations, we do a financial analysis on the company, because we just want a fair a wage for these people, a livable wage. Inflation is through the roof right now, and our increases are 3 to 4% a year. We're not even keeping up with inflation. Healthcare is so expensive now that a lot of people are having to choose whether they stay insured or they pay the light bill at home.
Healthcare is a very big deal, and pretty much is the top topic when I'm talking to people. And they're very concerned about this exact calculation, that I have to pay my bills, I have to buy food for my kids, and I can't afford a premium, so go to the emergency room or something else. I know that other countries of the world, their solutions to this, to me, it's an economic solution, which is it frees somebody from their job so they don't think in terms of I'm stuck for my benefits, and they can do something else. And they might have an idea, which I love, about having a new idea in business, an entrepreneur idea, start a new bakery, but they can't because they're stuck for the benefits. But when we free that, we get an economic growth that happens from that. I think we've discussed healthcare poorly in this country. We've discussed in terms of insurance, which profits the insurance companies, but not about health for people to free them up economically. Overall, what was your feeling about when you're working with all this? I mean, how'd you feel at the end of the day?
When I first came onto being a staff representative for organized labor, I got assigned to a ASARCO here in Amarillo, and that's a perfect example of what you're talking about. So ASARCO back in the day, and everybody in Amarillo knows, was one of the top industries to work in here in the Panhandle. It was just as good to work at ASARCO as it was at any refinery or Pantix or any of these big places in the Panhandle. Years ago, and they were organized, they had organized labor for a long time. Years ago, a group from Mexico bought ASARCO, Grupo Mexico actually. And they bought ASARCO from the mines all the way to the Amarillo refinery. They bought the whole thing. Well, they started figuring out, they did a couple of really bad things that a lot of people aren't aware of and needs to be talked about more, because this happens more often than you would think. ASARCO was such a good place to work because they would refine copper, And within the refining of the copper, they took out they had other precious metals that would come out, like gold and silver and all that, and they refined that here, and they sold it. That was part of their profit. Well, Grupo Mexico came in and bought the whole Asarco deal, and they started realizing that if they didn't refine the gold here in Amarillo, and they didn't take that part out, and they left it as sludge, as a bad byproduct, they could ship that byproduct back to Mexico and refine it in Mexico, while here in the U.S., they were getting subsidies for disposing of the bad material, right, of the unwanted material. So they were sending that down there, refining that, taking the gold and all those precious metals in Mexico, and then, of course, their worth, became a little less. And then Asarco got to a point where they didn't get raises for 10 years here, and their insurance premiums their insurance coverage kept dropping, putting more on the worker. So they're actually, for the last 10 years that Asarco was operating here in Amarillo, their wages overall they were taking less home every time, because they would cut their insurance, they would cut the benefits, and no pay raises. So, I mean, you're really not going anywhere. Well, we went on strike. The first month that I took over this assignment, Asarco went on strike, and we were on strike for 2 years out there.
2 years.
2 years at Asarco here. And nobody crossed the picket line. Asarco was very strong. They had a really good organized labor. And what people don't understand either is that organized labor, most unions, they take care of their people while they're on strike. United Steelworkers, I could say this because I actually was part of it. United Steelworkers has a huge strike fund that they've been putting into, everybody puts into for when places go on strike. While we were on strike here for 2 years, the union was sending money to the local to pay for houses, to pay for bills, to pay for food. Nobody lost their home while we were on strike. Nobody lost their vehicles. We were able to maintain the strike through the union, and it's just back to what you said earlier about the union being a bad word. For a long time it was. For the first time in 20, 30 years, we're seeing a growth in union, organized labor through the United States. Starbucks is a perfect example.
Right.
And, them people go back and say, well, those are entry-level jobs. Well, minimum wage jobs are entry-level jobs, but sometimes people don't have an option, and you still have to work those jobs. And if you're working for $7.25 an hour right now, you cannot make ends meet. We got people working 3 or 4 jobs. We got educators working at Walmart after hours,
yes,
and still buying their own materials
yes,
for schools. And it's a shame that Starbucks CEOs making so much money, and while their employees are starving literally because they can't make ends meet. And it's not because the company's a bad company, because they can't raise their own wages. They're just allocating the money to their stock, to their CEOs, right, instead of putting their money to their number one asset as a company, which is their employees.
That's right. That's right. And that's why stock buybacks are so damaging, because the money that goes into that does not go back to people or to investment to grow the company or research and development for new ideas to grow the company. So I want to take our last few minutes and ask you what's going on now with you.
So I recently took a position with Gina Hinojosa running for governor here in Texas. After my campaign was done for land commissioner, I really enjoyed connecting with people and essentially doing what I've been doing for the unions for the last 8 years at a bigger level. And I really like being at the front and helping people and doing meaningful work. You know, I took a pretty substantial pay cut going from gas and oil to organized labor, but it wasn't about the money. It was about what I was doing. It was meaningful.
Yeah,
It was helping people like my parents, like people in our communities that get taken advantage of. And here recently, Gina called me and asked if I was interested in helping her campaign as a political director through Texas. So really, really hard choice to make. But I decided to take a leap of faith and try to help Gina. I really believe in what she's doing. I really believe in what Texas is doing now. People are coming out and they care, and they're seeing that politics affects our everyday life.
Mhm.
And I think that's what lacks here in the Panhandle is the education and the information to the everyday person. We don't have to go to work and not be able to retire with dignity. That's all everybody wants, is to have a good job where you can provide for your family. You can, you know, take a vacation a year if you can, and retire with dignity. And doing what I've been doing lately has made me realize that I can help. I can be part of the process of actually making Texas better for everybody, for my kids, for their friends, for my family, for everybody in Texas. And
I'm really excited to hear this. I think it's great. It's a great role for you. I had dinner with Gina when she was here. We talked at length. I think I talked a little too long because she kind of looked at me like, stop. But it really at length about education. And she's very passionate about that, as am I. And my wife is a teacher. I know your wife is a teacher. Yeah. And we are really screwing up on public education. And it's detrimental to our future. And that on top of all the graft and corruption and fraud. And I think that it's very important that people want a good life, retire with dignity, know where they're going, spend time with their family and their friends. But they also want to elect people that they can trust to see that through. And everyone I've talked to so far, the population of people have so far been very friendly, that they're looking for people to have these kind of conversations.
Absolutely.
That no more screaming on top of garbage cans and nailing and gnashing your teeth, but just how do we get to what is real and what is true, and then how do we build good policy about that? So I'm excited about your work. Do you have to go around the state quite a bit?
Yeah, so I'm taking care of the whole state. We're building political areas throughout the state, and I'll be traveling all over the state helping Gina with everything within the political department, trying to create a successful department, because if the department's successful, the campaign's successful, and then we get to do what we say we're going to do. You know, I had a friend that said one of the truest words or statements on education. He said, education is the equalizer.
Yeah.
In everything. You can come from nothing and have an education, and it can equalize the playing field for everybody. And that's what we need to protect. That's what we need to take care of, is those things that help equalize the playing field, that for kids that can't go to private school, that for kids that can't afford the private tutors, we have to keep our public education strong, because that's the only equalizer that's going to make our state and our nation continue to be the greatest nation in the world.
Well, that's right. And that's why if you look at the model of education, particularly out of Finland, for example, how they pay their teachers, the respect they give their teachers compared to what we're doing here now, it's night and day.
Absolutely.
And we can really learn to come back to the essence of what it is to be an American. I mean, the story of Abe Lincoln, reading his own books in a log cabin, educating himself. I mean, these are our historical notions about who we are as a people. But we're losing that. We're taking away because of the big money into the system where people can profit.
The opportunities is what sets us apart from every other country.
We have to make those opportunities.
Have to.
Because they're disappearing. And like I said, the people now, and this disparity, the people way up here don't really care about that too much. We could talk about AI all day long and how they're trying to use this to replace, we talk about entry-level workers, students, replace these the value that we have on people to extract a little more profit. But the big question is, what happens to people in the middle? What happens when you start, but there's no one to start a job where no one goes up the chain? We don't give the opportunity anymore. And then building that is difficult. Very passionate about people building their own future, their own opportunity, and their own basically creation of wealth based on ideas that they want to have in the world. And we're shortchanging them right now. So we can fix a lot of these things with the right people elected.
Absolutely. And that's, you said earlier, we have to come together. It's not left versus right. There's more people in the middle than there is on the extreme left or the extreme right. We all want the same thing. We want to be able to live with dignity and retire with dignity and provide for our families. And we got to stop fighting and choosing party before ourselves, before Constitution, before our country. It's not left versus right. It's a top versus bottom. And they're trying to squeeze every little bit of what they can from the middle to the bottom.
That's right. That's right. And my fear, as always, historically, when we get this big disparity, it ends violently. And there's a way for us to get out of it where it doesn't end that way, but our window is closing. So we can do it, but it's people like you who are actually doing it. So I would just want to say thank you.
Well, no, thank you for running. I know that, it's an uphill battle here in the Panhandle and West Texas and North Texas. But people like you stepping up is amazing. It's gives you hope. And that's all we can have is hope that the right people step in the right jobs and care about actual people, not businesses, not self-interest. You have no necessity to be doing this, what you're doing, spending all this time away from home and traveling, trying to help everybody else. You have done well for yourself, and it is truly heartwarming and gives me hope seeing people like you stepping up to the plate and saying, you know what, not for myself, but for what I believe in for our country. It's amazing. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. I will say it's not just uphill, it's into the wind. And in West Texas, that's the hardest thing to face is the wind. Because, oh, geez.
Absolutely. So,
thanks for your time.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's great being here with you guys. Look forward to maybe sitting down again sometime.
We'll do it.
Okay. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We need your help for the campaign. Of course, I'm obligated to say this. I think contractually, is that right? I have to say these things. So we need your vote. Let's make some serious change happen in this country. So, goodbye.
Okay, there we go. Good. So like I said, we recorded that yesterday because of scheduling, and it would be kind of difficult to have the interview in this windy weather, although sometimes it sounds like I'm on the beach. It's really just the panhandle wind. So I have a question here. So Gene asks, what will your legislative priorities be when you get to Congress? What committees do you want to serve on and why? All right. It's a great question, so thank you. I have a couple of priorities. I will put them in different categories. One is for the district here, and that's all about water, and it's about the aquifer. So my priority on this is to get the funding to build the right infrastructure to replenish the aquifer, which is the big one that goes all the way up to Nebraska. There are a couple of different aquifers around, but to build up, to replenish, and which will take time and really deep thought. But if we do the right infrastructure the right way, with the right people, the right partnerships at universities, the right scientists, the right geologists, the right hydrologists, we can absolutely do it. We're just not thinking in those terms right now. And we just think in terms of extraction, but not planning for the future. And I've had this conversation so many times about we have plenty of water. We have 100 years of water. But that kind of thinking is not so great for our great-grandchildren or anything for the future. And thinking in this mindset does nothing for us. We have to build instead of extract. Now, building means that's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of good wages. That's a lot of infrastructure to do the right thing. Good for farmers, good for ranchers, but good for people who are living in this area. So that's a technical priority. And like I always say, the money is not the hard. It's spending the money legitimately, spending the money with courage. Everybody's chasing money, but we are now spending a billion and a half a day in a war. We could easily spend the money for these past few weeks in this crazy war on real infrastructure, real things for the future, for help for people that need it. So, number one priority is to really do that. My dog is about to start barking. You should come over here, you can see it. Um, Second, actually, it's a primary priority, and I'll explain why. It's about money and corruption. We have to get money out of the system. The big money that flows in, it is so bad. I I knew it, and I've seen corruption firsthand when I was on the city council in Amarillo. It was right in my face. I couldn't believe it, but I saw it. I fought it. But now in this campaign, and I see the pervasive effect of money everywhere. And it's not just we need money to run a campaign, which we do, but there's a reason why we're not taking corporate PAC money for this. Um, I do not want to be in a system that we have to demolish. And so getting money, the big money out of our system is the priority. It's not the most important thing we can do, but it's the very first thing we have to do. And it's a big fight because people on both sides, and I'm not kidding about this, this is not a partisan issue. People on both sides are so embedded in the system of money. To get them out is nearly impossible. So we need to come in pretty hard with a new group of people who are working for all of you, saying that is enough because we just see it. And I'll give you an example of what we need to change: the revolving door. If you are elected and you're serving people, you should not ever be able to leave that office and the next day on a Monday go back into lobbying the next elected people. I would much rather see legislation as a lifetime ban. So you're elected, you do the job. When you're done, you go home. And that's what the founders have said. If you read the Federalist Papers, it's pretty clear. The job is to represent people and get home. As a matter of fact, during representation, you should be home. You shouldn't be in DC all the time. And we have a big problem with that now. We don't have real, true representation. So getting money out of the system. Now, both of these things are pretty big deals. And people have asked me, well, how are you going to do stuff? How are you going to make anything? You're one of a couple hundred people. And the answer is to collaborate with people of good faith, to build up for the future, to argue the right argument, and to not back down. And I won't. So those are really two big things that I want to see happen. There are many other things. I want to work on healthcare. Healthcare, like in the interview, it is probably the top question that I get from people about healthcare because it's inaccessible to people and it's very expensive. And I know firsthand because I've lived through it. My voice is still shot because of all this surgery I had for thyroid cancer. And it's a long process, and I know how expensive it is. I know the bills pile up. I know, I've seen it. So, fixing these problems with national health care that unlocks people from being locked into jobs, that's another priority for me. We have to move fast when we have power. Now, the other part of this question is what committees do you want to serve on? Everybody probably says Ways and Means because that's the big one. That's the money committee. That would be super. I doubt that would happen because that's what all the people with seniority want. But that's where you really make an effect on how you budget. But really inside of that is some of the things that I know pretty well is the committee, the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, which is good. I know those things. Actually, we should take technology out and make it its own standing committee because we are being railroaded by the techno bros right now. We really are. Even depending on how you're watching this video, um, I'm using this software called StreamYard that we stream 2 different platforms. So we go into Facebook, we go into YouTube, and those are big companies of the tech bro kind of mafia that own these things that pour out a lot of money into campaigns to get what they want. Same old thing. That's why we end up with data center craziness. So I know these kind of things, have some patents on some of this stuff. So me getting there to ask any questions, that would be, I think, helpful to people. I think there's a joint committee on economics, and I've taught economics before. That's why I always talk in those terms. That would be quite good to serve on as well. And then, of course, in our area, agriculture is a pretty big deal. So helping our farmers, because we need to do things to help them with price floors, things that can make sure the markets don't get demolished. We are running the number of small family farms that are going to go bankrupt this year. It's pretty extraordinary. I think we're looking, 10,000 in Australia to go because they can't make it. A lot is because of drought, but a lot is because the market was shot because tariffs destroyed things. So this insanity and this instability are the things that I really do want to work on with those kind of committees. Okay, let's take a look here at this question. Campaigns are complicated. What's the biggest mistake you've made this campaign and how did you fix it? I want to say that I should have a PhD in mistakes sometimes because we make quite a bit. So the biggest mistake so far is finding the wrong people that can help the campaign do the right work. And you have to go with your intuition. And especially in a campaign, we don't have a lot of money to pay people. So people you think of good faith will show up, but they end up hurting the campaign more than helping. So a big mistake is not digging too deeply into the motivations of people who want to come and help the campaign and really asking, what do you want to accomplish? So that's a big mistake. Second big mistake is not really understanding at the beginning how big of a district this is. I mean, we're more than 40,000 square miles, and I really like talking with people. I like getting together in person with people, and it is very difficult because to drive from one end of this district to the other is a good maybe 6.5 hours. And so just to have an event or go and talk with people and bid back, so that to get back is very difficult, especially when you have a home life. I want to see my family when my kids come in. So I'm a little selfish on my time with that. And the third big mistake I'd say is not really understanding how fundraising works for campaigns, because I really do firmly believe that the big money is ruining everything, and I won't do it. So I want to fight it. I want to break a system, but I won't be part of the system that we have to break. So understanding small, we do a great way. We pay for gas and hotels and signs and you name it, software. So understanding that better and the dynamics that I have learned that there is infrastructure and the consultants that live there in this area, they do all of this stuff. It's a crazy business, really. So yeah, campaigns are very complicated. Um, and I think the best we could do is keep learning and stick to what we think is right, and stick to try to do the right thing. And our group now with the campaign, from my campaign manager, Brian, my field director, Colin, my campaign manager, everyone around us, all of our volunteers, I really have not met more really fantastic people of well-meaning and good hearts. Really, seriously, people say that it's terrific. I mean, we love sitting down. We go on this big tour of the Panhandle, drive to these towns. It's fun because we're cracking bad jokes. I think my jokes are always good jokes, but but they're really great people. And so if I come back from mistakes to what is terrific, that's one of them. Yeah, I think that's it. So okay. Well, it's been 40 minutes. The wind is still blowing. My dog is still here. And I don't know if we have I don't see any other comments. Oh, looks pretty good. So please just take the last few minutes, if you'd like, to ask anything you'd like. I'm sure everyone wants to say it. Luna, she's smelling squirrels. So, all right. So I think we're going to stop there. I really appreciate everybody coming and watching tonight. I think our next live stream, I do want to talk about corruption. We'll see what works in the schedule. And live events are somewhat tricky, especially when we want to interview people because our schedules are different. So maybe a hybrid method like this works. But let me know. If you have questions for Jose, please let us know. Just post them. And then we will get his answers. Maybe make a video or get him back again. So this is important to get people's stories out. Not so, oh, there she goes. Let's see. Not so important for me to lecture all day about what I want to do, because there's plenty. But it's important to me that we get the stories out from people who live in this area too, so everyone knows that we're all pulling together, and we have a big job ahead of us. So I appreciate you watching tonight, and I will talk to all of you soon. Thanks.